Welcome to the Visionary Chronicles. Appreciate you being with me today. Know your time is precious, so I promise not to waste it. Thanks again for tuning in on this series that we have, which is a 9-part series. Hopefully you've listened to the other podcasts. If not, we'll do a quick recap for you. It's a 9-part series on the road to visionary leadership. Today we have Chronicle 8 out of 9, which is continuous learning and adaptation. So we got one more to go after this, but it's been a great series. Have great feedback from those that have listened to this series. And again, as I had mentioned last week and over the weeks, it's the first one we've had, but we had much feedback and actually recommendations to people that were wondering, how do I become visionary? How do I take steps towards becoming visionary? So hopefully you found this series helpful. And actually this series is also, as I mentioned before, I'm going to have a giveaway at the end of this podcast. So hopefully you tune in and show you how to get an ebook and an early release of The Visionary Leader, the new book, which this series is inspired by. You can see over my shoulder here. It's the new book, The Visionary Leader, the Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionaries. So it's been a labor of love for about 18 months, finally going to be released in June 30th, but it's on pre-sale now. And at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and really all global retailers will have the book. So would appreciate any support you would have on a pre-sale and also obviously on publication dates. So we'll be talking about that as well. And this is a follow-up to my first best-selling book, The Visionary Brand. So I've got The Visionary Brand, The Visionary Leader. The Visionary Brand was the success formula behind the world's most visionary brands. And so we've been very busy. I talked about over the last few months, actually, the new Visionary Brand Master Course that we've created from the book. It's literally about 2 hours of chapter-by-chapter videos of how a visionary brand and the elements of a visionary brand, and had tremendous feedback on that as well from those that have taken the course as well as those that have looked at the chapters on the course and read the book and see how they've applied it in their day-to-day. So that's available at thevisionaryfiles.com. So hopefully you're able to check that out. We also got a special going on with the Visionary Brand Master Course for this month as well. So I always like to start out with a quote, as you know, and this one was from last week as well, and it's from Alexander the Great. I thought it's such a great quote, I'm going to use it 2 weeks in a row. So it is, "I am not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I'm afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion." I felt that's very appropriate as we go through these chronicles of becoming visionary. The road to visionary leadership. So again, welcome back to the Visionary Chronicles. Again, I appreciate it, where we uncover visionary leadership, innovation, long-term success. In this first series that we have, the road to visionary leadership, we've explored a lot of different traits defining leadership. Those that challenge the status quo, which I love, those that inspire transformation, and those that build lasting legacies in their leadership. In this 8th chronicle, we're going to explore what are those defining characteristics of great leaders. The ability to continuously learn and adapt is what we'll focus on today. So before I jump into the 8th chronicle, I always give a little bit of a quick series recap. So for those of you that have not seen or rather heard the other chronicles in the Road to Visionary Leadership, a quick recap is that on episode 184, Chronicle 1, we talked about understanding visionary leadership and mindset. We explored the mental framework that defines visionary leaders, their ability to see beyond the present. I call it a lot of times future casting. Challenging conventional thinking and inspiring others to believe in a greater mission. So that was Chronicle 1. Chronicle 2 was 186, episode 186. Building a culture of innovation. Probably, if I was going to say the one that's the most overlooked, because you talk about culture, most people think about the bottom line. Most people think about creating great products. The thing that's often forgot, not on brands, but on leaders that aren't visionary, is building a culture, not just a culture, but a culture of innovation, because you need to serve that innovation pipeline for generations. You need to have incremental improvements. You need to have new products continually coming through that pipeline. And on that supply and demand curve that I talk about all the time, you need product along the front end and you need product on the back end. You need it on the early adopters, you need it on the late adopters, you need it on the innovator side. So this is a critical ingredient to ensuring that you have and are able to surf that innovation pipeline. So we discussed how leaders create environments that foster creativity, experimentation, fearless problem solving. So it's a great episode if you haven't listened to it, number 186. Number 187 is Chronicle 3, Strategic Foresight and Planning. We examine in detail how visionaries anticipate future and strategically position their teams for long-term success. So this really becomes kind of that future casting, I call it. So that's Chronicle number 3. Number 4, that's episode 188, was effective communication and inspiring greatness in your team. We emphasized, in particular, the importance of clarity, influence, and motivation in leadership, because a vision without, and I talked about this last week, it's so important for you to remember, a vision without communication is merely an idea, meaning that you're keeping to yourself and you don't have a vision that you can execute through others. Either you don't trust those people, or it's something that you just don't have the ability as a leader to execute through others. You just have a great idea, which goes nowhere. Episode 190 is Chronicle 5, Leading Through Change. We tackled some of this, what I call COVID situations, where you shut the world down. We're not used to that. So how do you navigate through transformation? Overcoming resistance along the way. There's a lot of different opinions get thrown your way. And turning disruption into an opportunity for growth. And I'd mentioned last week, disruption can be termed 2 different ways. You can say a new product or a new service is disruptive, or you can say the environment that you're in is very disruptive. And this is what we talk about in this Chronicle. Chronicle 6 is how to effectively, which is number 191, by the way, how you can effectively communicate and inspire greatness in your team. The ability to communicate effectively and inspire greatness and passion in your team in order for you to execute the steps that are needed to commercialize your product or your service or whatever it may be. That's extremely important because there's very few visionaries that I've come across. And I lay out everybody from Socrates to Gandhi to Lincoln, Martin Luther King, all the way up to current generational visionary leaders like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. You know, these are all leaders that could communicate to their team their vision and have their team execute their strategy. And number 7 last week was episode 192, Chronicle 7, which was measuring and celebrating success. We've talked about really an often overlooked area of leadership, which was measuring and celebrating success. And it's probably the one that I get the most questions on when I'm with Liquid Mind doing whiteboard sessions with these leaders. They'll say, how do I know? I don't have enough time. What do I celebrate? It's an interesting question because you think it's very intuitive, but it's really not for leaders. They don't understand a lot of times, number 1, how to communicate, which is Chronicle 6, but then also how to celebrate successes and measure this along the way. So you're not over-celebrating, but you're making it a part of your culture. And so I talked about that last week. So visionary leaders don't just have bold ideas. They possess a skill, the skill to articulate that vision with clarity, passion, and authenticity. They motivate everyone around them on a day-to-day basis and not an hour-to-hour basis. Even when they're not there, people see the vision, the passion of what's been instilled in this brand. And they act on a shared purpose as a result of that vision. And we'll talk about purpose. I did last week. We'll talk a little bit about it this week, how important purpose is. And I use the analogy of somebody walking into your company, asking for a job or wanting to be part of your company, and they ask you that question, what is your purpose? Are you able to answer that for them effectively? And it's not that you make great products. It's not that you have a great culture. It's just you've got a long-term intention to change society and the world in a certain way. And you're going to continue to do it authentically and with genuine passion. So with visionary leadership, it's important to understand It's not about standing still. It's about embracing change, staying ahead of this curve, and fostering a mindset of lifelong learning. And that's what we'll talk about in the Chronicle today, continuous learning. And the world's most successful leaders and brands recognize growth comes from the evolution, and evolution requires adaptation as you move along in that evolution. So we'll discuss in this episode how visionary leaders, how do they do this through curiosity? How are they agile? And how do they continue to innovate with these great ideas? So we're going to talk about that today, and the continuous Chronicle number 8, continuous learning and adaptation. So for me, it's an interesting one because of this curiosity factor that these visionary leaders have. And when I was writing the book, it was a consistent theme that all of them were curious. All of them were agile, either by design or by choice. So they had to also innovate along the way, or else they wouldn't have been visionary. And they also knew the lasting impact that their project, product, service would have on society. And many of these we're using today. Andrew Carnegie's steel, John D. Rockefeller oil. So this first thing we'll talk about is this power of continuous learning in leadership. And one thing I'll say with visionary leaders and everyone that I studied in the book, visionary leaders never stop learning. So you as a leader, when I say don't stand still, one of the most important aspects of not standing still is sitting and learning and dedicating time to learning, to making yourself a better leader for others and staying ahead of the curve. These visionary leaders, they evolve in their industries, and they change the world as a result. But you have to never stop learning. That's the power of continuous learning. And second, you have to have a mindset of curiosity, of innovation, problem solving, long-term success, failure through risk. The best leaders learn from failure as much as they learn from success. That's what I talked about last week, is that reward excellent failures. Don't always reward success. I'm not saying you don't reward success, but not enough leaders understand that the step to success is failure. Unless you fail, you never succeed. And I go back to Seth Godin's comment, safe is risky. You have to be risky in order for you to succeed. So those are a couple points on the power of continuous learning in leadership. So what are some of these strategies for continuous learning? That's many times the question that I get. Okay, I get these top-line principles of the power of continuous learning, but what are the strategies for continuous learning and adapting in my role as a visionary leader? And so I'll give you a few points here. Not all of them, as I talked about before. I'm going to give you 5 today, so we're not overloading you. But the first is to stay curious. And these are points that I'll send out as well. And I do this through my newsletter, which if you want to subscribe to that, you just go to my website or go to liquidmindsight.com. You can go to briansmeltzer.com, BRYANSMELTZER.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get the notes that go with this as well. I have a YouTube studio, which I have the transcripts as well. I just wanted to make note of that in case I hadn't done that previously, and those that may not have heard of it, I want to make sure that you're aware of that. As I go through these, I have the notes available for you and the transcripts. So going back to these key strategies for continuous learning and adaptation, first is stay curious. You want to seek out new ideas, new perspectives and trends in your industry. And I'll put a caveat there. I'll say in your industry and not in your industry. Staying curious is one of the most important things when I was running the product teams or when I talked to the brands on the design side and working with product designers. I love this one because I tell them to stay curious. And what do they mean by that? And I said, well, Really what it is, it goes to adaptation as well. Adapting technologies and applying it to your product or service is one of the most effective ways for you to become innovative. So always stay curious. The second is embrace change. Don't try to run away from it. I want you to embrace change. View disruption as an opportunity rather than a threat. And those that took this position, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, working with brands that went through COVID, those that were proactive versus reactive are more successful today. So embrace change is number 2. View disruption as an opportunity rather than a threat. Number 3 is experiment and iterate. Keep trying. I go back to the Thomas Edison quote. I didn't fail 9,999 times. I actually found 9,999 ways it doesn't work to invent the light bulb. Number 10,000 was the magic. So if he wouldn't have iterated, he would have never succeeded in innovating. So be willing to test, fail, learn, and improve. Test, fail, learn, and improve. Number 3 is develop a learning curve. This is number 4. Develop a learning curve. So you want to encourage your teams to challenge assumptions and seek knowledge. And a team that is curious is also a team that will experiment and it will also embrace change. So develop a learning culture. That's important. Number 5 is adapt with a purpose, not just because it's a default reaction. You want to make strategic pivots while staying true to your vision. That's key. And I've seen too many brands, too many companies, too many leaders, they cut and chase and maneuver and change course just because of a challenge. Adapt with purpose. Purpose is, what do you stand for? I mean, you could make pivots, but never forget where your destination is, your vision. So stay true to your vision even though you adapt. The next area is adapting to change. And I think it's best, for me at least, when I look at this, it's best to give you some visuals of people that have adapted to change. And this comes out of my book. Portions of these come out of my book. I've had a few of these individuals in there, Elon and Steve. I also have Bezos and Reed Hastings, just as examples of adapting to change. So Steve is the first one at Apple. And in a sentence, he really reinvented industries by continuously challenging the status quo. Keep asking yourself why. Why do we do it this way? That's what Steve would do relentlessly with his team. Asking the question why gives you the answers to what. If you say, why does it have to be done this way? What do we do about it? Make a change. So you want to embrace that. Reinvent industries and move beyond the status quo. Just because it's done this way doesn't mean it has to be done this way. The second lesson is Sir Elon. Tesla and SpaceX, they adapt to technological advances with relentless innovation in everything that they do. I would venture to guess Elon's probably had more failures than he's had successes, and he's fine with that because he recognizes the long-term vision of what he's looking to achieve in a changing society. Third is Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And this is a great story because he pivoted Amazon from a bookstore to the world's largest e-com and cloud computing giant. It's amazing some of these changes and adaptation these visionary leaders have had over the years. And you can do the same. You don't have to have this biggest cloud computing pivot. You can do things, small changes add up to big, big innovation. And Reed Hastings at Netflix. This is a beautiful one. They transitioned Netflix from DVDs to streaming and then into content production. That was the scale. You know, getting these DVDs in your mailbox wasn't a scalable business. So he adapted to this change and was one of the pioneers in streaming. And we know the success that Amazon continues to have today. So those are just some of the examples, but they're big examples. And it doesn't matter big or small. These adaptation lessons apply to everybody, including yourself as a visionary leader and taking steps towards the road to visionary leadership. So some of the thoughts that I had on this Chronicle number 8 on the path to sustained leadership is that the most successful leaders and brands are those that never settle. They never stop learning, and they never stop evolving. The best brands are the ones that challenge themselves. When I was at Oakley, Jim Gennard challenged us all the time. He did not care what the competition did. He wanted to what he would say is out-invent ourselves. And everybody else follows, because we knew that we were the leader in the industry and we championed change and evolving. So as you continue on your road to visionary leadership, embrace curiosity, embrace agility, and this, what I call relentless pursuit of knowledge. Because the future will belong to you, I guarantee it, to those who are willing to adapt and change, but never lose sight of their purpose and their vision. So when we talk about this adaptation and learning and change, make sure you as a visionary leader follow those before you, but make sure that you stick to these rules authentically and with a passion, and make sure that you're continually adapting and evolving as a company, as a brand, and most importantly, as a leader. So again, I want to thank you for tuning into the Visionary Chronicles today. If you've enjoyed the episode, I want to thank those that have subscribed and pass it on to others. But if you could, subscribe, and if you feel this would be something that would be useful to others, please pass it on. That's where we get the most value that we can provide to other leaders. And also subscribe and review. It's always appreciated. So stay tuned for our next episode of the Road to Visionary Leadership. It'll be a final in our 9-part series of Road to Visionary Leadership. And, whether you're an aspiring leader, I always say this, is that a seasoned entrepreneur, you're seeking advice, growth, the Visionary Leader, the new book I'm releasing, and also the Road to Visionary Leadership, this new series, hopefully has helped you and guide you along your journey and allowed us to kind of take that first step together with you. And also, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, feedback, or things that you would like to see in the Visionary Chronicles. Always happy to hear what you have to say, because I value your time and I value your opinion. And very much so, these opinions actually came up with this series. So I had to write it, but the series idea came through our audience and the listeners that we have out there. So very appreciated. So as we wrap up, I talked about earlier, as we wrap up this episode of Visionary Chronicles, I have an exciting opportunity for you. Exclusive to the listeners of the Visionary Chronicles is my upcoming book, The Visionary Leader, The Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionary Leaders, is nearing its release in June. And I'm inviting you to hopefully be a part of this journey if you would like. And you'd receive a ebook and share your thoughts. And if you have an early review or a review once it is officially released through Amazon or the Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, whatever it happened to be, and share that review, would be greatly appreciated. But I just want to get it out there to my leaders, the entrepreneurs, those that are interested in the subject matter we talk about in the Visionary Chronicles. So you claim your copy at Booksprout through the link that I'll provide here. And I'll also put that on the social media site. I'll put that in the notes, and that's why I mentioned earlier about the transcripts. That's where it's located as well. So until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep shaping the future. And again, thank you for your continued support. It's always appreciated. And I look forward to hearing from you. So stay true, stay authentic, be different, be great, but enjoy the journey along the way. And if you have any questions, feedback, anything you may have, we're also offering free, what we call sessions with Liquid Mind. Feel free to go to our site, sign up for the sessions. You get a free meeting. If you have any questions or things you would like to follow up with me or things we might be able to support you on, feel free to go to liquidmindsite.com, liquidmindsite.com. We'd look forward to hearing from you. But until then, I look forward to the next Visionary Chronicles, and have a great, awesome day.